Hello and welcome to the Art of Decluttering podcast. I am your host, Amy Revell, and I've got my friend Bonnie back with me this week because, as promised, we're doing an episode on making do, which I'm pretty stoked about, Bon.
Oh, me too, because I'm just the queen of making do.
So tell us how would you describe making do?
I think making do is thinking, oh, I wish I had this, because that would be the perfect tool or the perfect instrument, and then taking a step back and going, well, I can actually still achieve the same goal, just different journey.
Yeah, I love it, because it is about then saying, is there more than one way to skin a cat? Which is actually, now I'm saying it out loud, a terrible saying.
It's a bit like the bite an elephant one, like how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Like that's a big one that they said at uni, and I said it at a workshop a couple of years ago, and people actually looked at me like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, I agree. We shouldn't be hurting elephants and cats.
Yeah.
But there's different ways to solve the problem. And sometimes it means you have to make adjustments or not considerations, but like you've kind of got to let go of part of it. Sometimes it works out better.
Yes. And I think especially when we get to things like uni taskers, like the melon baller, you actually find that making do with something else, it's like an expansion in your brain. It's creating more neural pathways, it's critical thinking, it's outside the box. I think it's better for us.
I totally agree. Like I wrote down like, what are the benefits of making do? I'm like, you save money, you reduce waste, you increase your creativity, you save time. Like all of those things are good. And often you end up with less clutter.
Yeah. And I think it's actually good to challenge yourself every once in a while, because too often we're always looking for the easy path, the quickest route, the thing that will get us there faster. And, it's like with all these time-saving devices that we have in our houses.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to use it, it actually doesn't save you any time, because you get so frustrated looking at it thinking, I should know how to use this NutriBullet thing, but I just don't know, and I don't have the time to actually sit down and work it out. So I feel like just taking that step back and going, well, actually, there's another way I can do this, and that's okay. It's really good for our brains to have a little bit of a challenge.
I totally agree. And I think what you said is key, is that there's so many items that are marketed to us that are solo utility. Like, what did you call it? You called it
a unitasker.
Unitasker. I love that. Because unitaskers are very, very good at the one thing they do.
Yes. It's like the avocado slicer. Slices an avocado beautifully. Does absolutely nothing for anything else.
That's right. And you already have a knife.
Yes.
Which also slices an avocado, but you've got to use some intention.
It's so true. I was looking at the Aldi catalogue this last week, because they're bringing out all the Christmas stuff, and they literally have sort of a slicer for a potato, and it helps make nice fine little slices in the potato, and then you chuck it in the oven and it's this roast potato with these cool little slices in it. I thought, oh, that looks amazing. I really want to try one. And then I said to my mum, yeah, but I've got a knife.
Yeah. And how amazing if you can learn better knife skills or teach your kids to cut potatoes well.
Yes. I mean, I think too often we try and rely on tools to do all the work for us rather than upgrading our skills.
Yeah, and sometimes the effort of using the tool is actually more than if you just did it yourself.
Yeah.
And you're like, actually, I've created more work with more stuff with less money to achieve exactly the same purpose. Or it's so hard to do it, you then just don't have potatoes. All of a sudden you kind of forget that you could just slice them in quarters and roast them. You could peel them, and like you kind of limits that creativity sometimes.
Yeah, it really puts you in a box, and you can't step outside that box to think a bit more critically about the situation.
So one of the things we've been making do with the last, probably it's been a month, is our microwave died. And we went to the shops and had a look, and we thought we found one we liked, and then we didn't end up liking it. And so we've been about a month without a microwave. And the only one thing that has annoyed me is I wanted to have nachos last night and I couldn't melt the cheese. But I mean, I could have put the oven on, but it was like I was in a rush, and I was like, I just want like something. That's the only thing we haven't been able to substantially and appropriately make do without a microwave.
And that's awesome, because all the stuff that comes out about how bad microwaves are and what they do to nutrients in your food. Good on you. Brave step. I like it.
I'm not saying that we'll definitely stay without one.
Mm.
And admittedly, like, we don't cook a lot. So it's like oats and,
Mm-hmm.
defrosting something. So we're not using our microwave a lot, but we've totally and utterly made do.
Yeah, and doesn't it feel good to know that now you've got that little bit of extra space in the
Mm-hmm.
kitchen?
And I love that we talked about recording this episode weeks ago, because I've been really noticing all the make do things. So last week we
Nice.
had, I would reckon there was about 10 people for dinner.
Yeah.
And people were bringing salads and someone brought a dessert. So for the salads, they're like, do you have salad servers? And I was like, no. But what if I get you a fork and a spoon and you can use that? And I was like, oh, we've got tongs. We can use tongs. And so we just made do without salad servers.
Yeah.
And then someone had made a sponge cake. So we sliced up the sponge cake. She's like, oh, can I grab a cake server? And I was like, we definitely don't have a cake server, because it broke, and then I realized we hardly ever used it. But in this instance, I actually needed a cake server. And so I just said, here's some options. I'm like, here's a spatula, here's an egg flipper. And she used the egg flipper, and it was totally fine, Bon. Like, it was totally fine. I was like, mental note, I just made do.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because when you get married, I don't know if you were like this, but you go out and you buy a special knife to cut the cake.
I did not. I was a minimalist before then.
Oh, so many people do it. And like, they've always got these pretty bows on them, and there's a special knife to cut their wedding cake, and then there's a special cake server, and a lot of people keep them, and that's like their special, cake serving set and stuff. And I just never, I don't know if I never did it or I never kept it, but it's so funny, because I feel like we do get really caught up in the ceremony of, we want to be able to, do things really pretty and put on that kind of Martha Stewart front of like, oh, I've got a cake server, and I've got the knife that's reserved just for the cake. Whereas an egg flipper, I can't tell you how many times I've used an egg flipper as a cake server. Like, who cares?
Who cares, indeed. And not only did I not have that special knife for my wedding, I didn't even order a cake, because dessert was included. And I was like, I'm not going to spend an extra couple $100 on a cake. Are you kidding me?
Oh, seriously, if I went back, I would make do my wedding so much more differently.
Totally. Yeah. What's another area that you see it really helpful to make do, or that you've made do?
Well, at the moment, we've just moved house about a month ago, and it's a bit of a fixer-upper, and it has this, beautiful brown lino in the kitchen.
Hello,
and
80s.
Hello, 80s. And, it's got the whole Thermalux gourmet wood-fired stovetop and oven to cook on. And just all of these really lovely, interesting things from 40 years ago. And a dishwasher was obviously not included when they put their kitchen in. And so it's got no dishwasher. And so, we're a family of 6. There's a lot of dishes. But what has been interesting since not having the dishwasher is I actually feel like there's less dishes now than our previous house where there was a dishwasher. Like, I think we're being more intentional about reusing things, and not just putting every plastic bowl straight into the dishwasher because we've had a slice of bread in it. And I think that that's been, like, eventually when we renovate the kitchen, I'll put in a dishwasher, but it won't be a full dishwasher. I'm going to do drawers, like the 2 small drawers, because I feel like even as a family of 6, we don't really need to fill that much space. And that's been really good, making do without the dishwasher, because I'm bonding with my husband. We're doing dishes together, or we're getting the kids involved and getting them to dry stuff. And it kind of creates that family time. So it's a chance for us to not only make do, but to slow down a bit and just connect a bit more, which has been really nice.
And making do will often not be forever, but it makes you really think about the changes that you do want to make, or the solution that you want to bring in. So if it had a full dishwasher, you would be using a full dishwasher. But the fact that you've made do means you're kind of rethinking how you will solve that problem going forward.
Yeah, and I think another thing, like in the kitchen that we're in, we've had to switch over a lot of the lights and stuff and put in down lights because, it was all like oyster lights and sconces and all these wild and wacky things. And I haven't obviously redone our kitchen yet, so I didn't want to put all this lighting in that wouldn't be in the right places. So
Mm,
I've just literally put one down light in the kitchen because it's an open plan and it flows into the living. And even though there's no light above the sink and there's no light above the stove where I'm cooking, and there's times where I'm like, oh, my head's blocking the light, I'm okay with that because it's a temporary thing and it's bright enough that I can make do. Like, yeah, it's not
mm,
perfect, but I know that it's just for now until I work out exactly what the design of the new kitchen's going to look like. So
yeah.
I think sometimes we just need to, yeah, take a step back and realize that progress, not perfection, is the
Mm.
aim.
There's been some clients that I've worked with who delay their decluttering because they can't afford to buy containers at the time. And I'm
Yes.
like, let's get a cereal box, chop that up to store your socks in for the moment. Like we can make
Yeah.
do. Don't
Yeah.
let perfection be the enemy of progress, as you said. But like, what does make do look like? Maybe it looks like using an old tissue box, cut it up, use this, do that. Like there are so many options that people can do that's a make do option. And then once
Mm.
you've made do, sometimes you make do just that bit longer because you're like, it's
Mm.
actually not so bad.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And that was one of the things I loved about Marie Kondo when her show was out, was she was using old shoe boxes to help
Yeah.
organize and categorize stuff in drawers. And I just think that's brilliant. Like you
Right?
have shows like the Home Edit that are beautiful and they're rainbowifying and they look amazing, but also they are high end clients. They are people who
Correct.
can afford to spend oodles of money on all of those containers. And
Mm,
for most of us, that's not practical and it's not a priority. Like I would so much rather take my family away for a week's holiday than spend, $1,500, $2,000 on beautiful containers. Like
yeah.
it's about what you prioritize, I think,
Mm,
and what you're willing to sacrifice. Because too
yeah.
often I
Yep.
think we get caught up in trying to have it all and trying to be all.
Mm. I think one of the areas that I need to stop making do in is in my wardrobe
Yeah.
because I make do all the time with
Mm,
few clothes, with
mm.
clothes that have like been worn to the point where they're a bit threadbare, that the elastic's gone. Like I am not someone who enjoys fashion or shopping or clothes or even knows what looks good.
I
And
feel
so
ya.
I make do all the time.
Mm.
And it's fine. I don't think I've lost friends over it. I don't it's fine. But it's interesting when I was reflecting on it the other day is like how many hundreds, if not thousands of dollars I will have saved maybe over the
Mm.
last 5-10 years by making do. Because
Mm.
if I wear a pair of jeans for 6 months longer than someone else, by the end of my life, I might have saved 3 pairs of jeans. Now, I
Mm.
know, like, listeners hear what we're saying is not drive everything into the ground and it's not about being, throwing yourself into poverty, but it's also about, like, could I make do?
Mm.
Yes, my favorite moisturizers run out, but before I go and replace it, could I just make do and use the other ones that are sitting here that I've already paid for that are totally fine in date? And
Mm.
then I'll buy the one that I usually use.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. I have the same problem as you with clothes, actually. I had these two pairs of high waisted leggings that
Mm,
I probably got when my fourth child, when I was pregnant with him, and he's two and a quarter now. And so they've had a good couple of years, and they're only like cotton on ones, but dead set, I think I would have worn them like 400 times
that's
each.
the best.
And I wore one pair a few weeks ago to yoga, and I realized that there was a bit of a hole in the seam in near the crotch, and I thought, oh, I should probably stop wearing these. And then still wore them. But then a few days later, I was in a shop trying on some clothes, and I caught a glimpse of myself in these leggings, and I was
Mm.
like, why am I still, why are you still wearing these? And so because I was headed to the beach for a swim that day, I forced myself to throw them in the bin after I got
Oh,
changed into my togs,
brilliant.
because I knew if I brought them home, I would just wash them and wear them again.
That's the key.
Oh
That's
my
the
goodness.
key. I say to women often, like when you've got a pair of undies on that is
Mm,
threadbare, don't think, oh, I'll replace them. Throw
yeah,
them out before you shower. Like literally just
yeah,
don't wash them, put them in the bin, and you're
yeah,
forced to then get something because you
yeah.
can't really make do without them.
No, that's true. And if you can, I mean, all the power to you.
Yeah. I was thinking around making do the other day, Bon, with food, because food
Mm,
waste is such a huge issue. And I think sometimes what we do is we have exactly in our minds what we want, and we go and get that thing, and we don't kind of think multi-purpose. So
mm,
the other day we were having wraps for lunch as a family, and we had some leftover chicken, there was some avocado and spinach and tomato, and we're just making wraps. And then one child, who shall remain nameless, used up all of the avocado.
oh,
And then I was like, oh, I've got nothing. Like, I need something that's like
moist.
yeah. I was trying to
Yeah,
avoid saying that word. You're
I
disgusting.
know, I know. Sorry.
Not at all. I needed something. And so then I was like looking in the fridge and I was like, I don't eat mayonnaise and da da da. Da. And then I saw some roast pumpkin from the night before and I was like, great, I'll mush up the roast. It was so good. And I reckon it probably would have gone to waste because it was like literally a pretty small piece.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I may do. I didn't think, oh, I've got to run down to the shops and get avo.
Mm,
And making do can be, oh, I don't have the thing that I actually need and want, but can I get creative with food?
yes, yes. And I feel that we get to the point where there's maybe a third of the stuff or a quarter of the stuff gone out of our pantry or our fridge, and we're like, oh my gosh, the pantry is bare. We need to go shopping. But realistically, if you just challenge yourself and go, well, actually, can I create a meal out of
Mm,
what I've got here? Like, you think about that rhyme about old Mother Hubbard went to the cupboard and to fetch the doggy a
yes.
bone, and the cupboard was bare. Like, when do we actually ever get to the point where the cupboard is totally bare? Like, even when we're moving,
Yeah.
there is still oodles of stuff. Like, our conception around scarcity is
So
just
true.
crazy. It's just crazy.
I'm writing down old Mother Hubbard on my notes because I try and do an eat yourself out of house and home each June. And I often
Okay.
invite like my community to do it with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the idea of maybe rewriting our old Mother Hubbard poem.
Yes, I love it. That is
we
so good.
the other day it was even last night. We were having Mexican for dinner, and we'd wanted to have corn chips, but all of us had forgotten to get corn chips. And so the kids were like, "Oh, we can't have it." And we're like, "Well, just let's make wraps, or there's bread. Do you want to make a sandwich with Mexican?"
Mm,
And yes, it's not exactly as it was planned, but I tell you what, we all got fed. We didn't waste food. We didn't waste time going picking
yeah.
something up. Like maybe in your fridge, you don't need every type of mayonnaise. Maybe just one will
Or
be
six
enough.
types of flowers.
6 types of flowers, yes. Flowers, not the pretty things in the garden.
Oh, you can have lots of those. They're
Yeah,
beautiful.
we give you full permission.
As long as they're not getting moldy and gross, then they need to
Yeah,
go.
yeah. So why do you think that we're so resistant to making do? Do you think it's because we saw our parents and our grandparents make do and we have disposable income and we have everything at our fingertips?
I don't know the exact psychological stuff behind it, but I do feel like marketing and advertising's probably got a really big role to play
Mm,
in this. Especially when you look back to the trends kind of since the 1950s, where they decided that no, it wasn't enough that everybody had a toaster that was going to work for their lifetime. We want to make them want another toaster that's a different color or a different shape or has a different function and a different feature. And I mean, that's everywhere now, isn't it? Like, from clothes in the stores, the color waves, oh my goodness, they last like 3 weeks, if that.
mm,
It's a new visual display every week or two. And the same thing happens with all of our appliances. They're a limited time and then they change them. They upgrade them, they change a color, they make, something new or different about it because they want
mm.
you to keep buying. They want you to keep having more and to not be satisfied with the old one because there's a fancy new shiny one. And so I think when it comes to the art of making do, we've kind of been conditioned to need and want that perfect thing that does the job exactly the way we want it, or we've been told it should be done. And so we don't look at the alternatives. And I think, like for us, we've moved to this property. It's, over 3/4 of an acre. It's an old permaculture place. There's a lot of infrastructure here that's been here for a long time. Some of it's a bit neglected, and we're trying to kind of fix it up. There's a real theme here of thinking outside the box. What can I reuse something for? And I have seen, especially because I'm a bit of a gardener, and I've seen a lot online, people getting old doors, old windows, banging them all together and making kind of like a glass greenhouse for those southern states that are nice and chilly and need a bit more warmth and stuff like that. And I think there's something to be said for us learning to make do rather than always needing new.
Yeah. And I think sometimes there's a fear, almost like, am I a real adult if I don't have a food processor? Am I a real adult if I don't have a blender? Am I a real adult if I don't have a slurp?
Have I made it in the eyes of the world?
Have I made it? Like, what would be more mortifying than someone coming to my house and realizing that they bought cream and I don't have a hand blender? Like, what could be more mortifying than that? Like, it's there's this sense of like, but of course, like, we don't question it.
Yeah.
And obviously, as professional organizers and declutterers, we're not saying keep everything just in case you could repurpose it, in the same way that we're not saying go and buy everything because you could make do, but it's about being intentional. Like, okay, why do I have this? Do I need this thing? There's, on wrapping paper, how you can now buy a circular thing that you slide onto it and it cuts the paper for you, right? So go for your life if that's the thing you need, but also scissors.
Yeah, I had one. I tried it. I hated it. So
I've never tried it because there's just like gimmicky things, every professional organizer, in fact, everybody that's listening has seen this in someone's house. You know that keep, the banana shaped keep container for your half-eaten banana that you're meant to put in that. Like, oh my goodness, what the heck?
I know, like bananas come in a skin. You don't need a container.
And they come in different shapes. Like, how am I going to... And if someone, like my husband is notorious for having half a banana on his breakfast, the other half just sits in the fruit bowl and he slices maybe a millimeter off in the morning that's gone brown.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's so many things that you're like, are you actually going to use this?
Yeah.
I think when we buy an appliance, it often comes with a bajillion little add-ons and tools. And like, I'm forever saying to people, you don't need to keep the dough hooks for your like
your kitchen master or whatever.
If you're never going to make dough. Yeah. Like, but it came with it.
Yeah.
And
it's a set. It's a set. I can't split up the set.
Yeah, because you can make do without that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Otherwise, it's just sitting in your cupboard for 10, 20, 40 years, never being used.
There's just no point. If there's no shame in breaking up a set. There's no shame in going, I bought a jacket and pantsuit and I really only like the jacket now. Get rid of the pants. Like, make do with what you've got. Think creatively. And sometimes making do means you don't do the thing. So there was a period that we didn't have an iron, and making do, we did not, like, how you see people like heating up a pot on the stove and then they'll use a pot to iron. Sometimes making do's, you're like, this is just how my shirt is. And yes, I'll hang it up in the bathroom while I shower for a little bit of steam therapy. But I'm actually just not going to iron. Like, making do can be just don't do.
Oh, I love it. It's like with kids' cards. My kids are still young, and I went through a phase of buying, the blank packs of cards from the craft shop so that they could make birthday cards. And honestly, the amount of times those kids just like, oh, I've got to make a card for the neighbor, and I've got to, like, just for no reason at all. And so they got used up pretty quickly. So now when it comes time for some kid's birthday, I'm like, go and make a card. And they're just ripping pages out of scrapbooks or like
Brilliant.
whatever random bits of paper they can find. Because, I mean, who's expecting them to keep that card for the rest of their life? Like the gift is in the effort and the thought and the, you know, really cool drawings that goes on the card. Like,
we're making it easy for people to declutter when we give them crap cards. Like, I think it's a gift.
yes, yes, 100%.
I have been known to write on the back of a card, this must be decluttered within 3 weeks.
I love it.
Because we're going to help people to get there.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes you need to give people permission as well. Like, it's okay, I don't expect you to keep this forever.
Yeah, exactly. I would love people to come into our Facebook community and tell me what it is that you've been making do. Like, what is an area that you're like, yeah, I make do in that area. I don't have a rice cooker because I can make do with a saucepan. A lot of the make do products said, you know, it will save you time. Well, maybe it's not saving you time if you can't find it and your kitchen's full and it takes forever to unstack the dishwasher. Maybe making do would actually give you more time, make you more present, make better choices, give you extra money and room. So I want you to come over, tell me what's the making do in your world. Any other thoughts on making do, Bon?
Well, one that springs to mind is I have this, 2.25-year-old, and usually there's, a bit of mess that comes about with that. And about, 6 months ago, I decided to stop doing face washes because I was just sick and tired of washing them all the time. And so now I pick him up from his high chair and I carry him to the sink and I wash his hands and face in the sink straight away. And it's like,
brilliant.
Why do I waste all this time on a face washer when it doesn't get into between their tiny little fingers anyway?
Yeah.
And it's just like there's just sometimes you just have to take a step back and think, is this really the best way or the only way that I could do this? Is there another way?
Is there an easier way? I love it. It's so good. It's efficient, but it's also really conscious when you're making do.
Yeah, and it's helping reduce the clutter in your house, helping reduce the mental load. Yeah. It's just helping you live a more intentional, freer life. Who doesn't want that?
Who doesn't want that? I do.
Me too.
Thank you for joining me, Bonnie. It's always fun when we get to chat and catch up and share decluttering goodness. If you're in Queensland and you want a professional organiser, what is your web address for them to find you, Bon?
Just head to littlemissorganised.com.au.
Yeah, excellent. Until next week, be having a think about how you can make do, declutter things as you go, and enjoy the freedom. Bye. I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land this podcast is recorded on. I would also like to pay respects to their elders, both past and present, of the Kulin Nation, and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love you to rate and review the show on your podcast app. That will help others to find the Art of Decluttering podcast as well. If you'd like any more information, you can visit theartofdecluttering.com.au. And I would love to see you in my Facebook group. Just search the Art of Decluttering community on Facebook and join today. I hope that you have an incredible rest of your day and enjoy the freedom.